What is going on, everybody? This is Josh back again with another video on Tech and Ish. Now, today's video is going to be about 911. It's season 3, episode 3. And if you remember from my last video, it ended off with a cliffhanger, basically. You end up seeing Christopher falling off the fire truck after the tsunami starts pulling back. And Buck is basically trying to find him. And it just ends right there. Also, the Ferris wheel as well. You have Captain, which is Bobby. He goes to this Ferris wheel because there's actually people who are still up there needing help. You end up seeing Ronda Rousey up there as well, who's helping other people, and Eddie, who's also climbing up the Ferris wheel trying to help them as well. And you know, it basically ends right there, trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And this video is going to be about what actually happened. And this episode was actually pretty good as well. I mean, it keeps on getting better. And I think this is where it's going to end with the tsunami. So it's basically going to be about people who are hurt and who basically just need help on trying to get to like a hospital. So as we begin, Buck, he's trying to find Christopher. It looks like things are so died down that now he can actually walk through the water. And he basically can't find Christopher at all. You can hear him screaming his name out a lot, and basically there's just no luck. And the whole episode kind of goes off on him trying to, just his part, he's trying to find Christopher and he's having no luck. You end up seeing Buck finding Christopher's glasses, and you kind of get that idea of maybe Christopher is actually dead, maybe something actually happened to him and he's no longer going to be in this show. I'm hoping that that's not what this happens. Obviously I know, but I'll tell you guys what happened towards the very end. So you end up seeing this couple who they're basically going to get a divorce. Now, the husband is basically taking his wife to that pier again, and they're trying to get on that Ferris wheel because it looks like that's where they met, or that's where they basically fell in love. So he's trying to take her there all over again, and it basically kind of goes like back in time before that tsunami ever hit. He goes over there, he goes on top of the Ferris wheel, and that's when the tsunami hits again, and he hits his head nasty. Like, I don't know if the pressure of that tsunami just made him go back, but he ends up hitting his head, and you actually see it, and you can actually feel that. I mean, it looks nasty. And it's actually kind of sad because the husband is trying to, it looks like he's trying to work things out with his wife, but she's actually adamant about this relationship being over, or this marriage being over. And she brought the papers, and he's like, well, I don't have a pen to sign for it. She ends up busting out with 2 pens. Like, you're gonna sign this paper because I'm just done with this relationship. And I actually thought with this whole tsunami hitting that maybe they'll rekindle something, but towards the very end, or towards the end of that just one snip, he ends up telling her, just give me the papers. Obviously we couldn't work. We were a beautiful thing, but we just couldn't work. So he just signs the papers, and that's the end of their story. So as I mentioned, you end up seeing Ronda Rousey in this show, and it looks like she's going to be sticking around for a little bit longer, because I saw a little clip of the next episode that's happening, and she's actually going to be in that one too. So I don't know if she's going to be a series regular, but she is going to be sticking around for a little bit longer. Now, her acting role into this, I mean, I didn't feel it quite well. It just, I don't know, I just didn't like it that much. Maybe she'll come off a little bit better on the next one, but for this one, I didn't like it. I don't know, to me, maybe like her acting was a little off. She still kind of seemed like she's like this tough person. I don't know, it's just her acting is not that good. So Ronda Rousey and Eddie end up jumping off the Ferris wheel into the water, and it looks like she either landed wrong or hit maybe a debris under the water. It looks like she actually hurt her arm, and they're telling her that she needs to go to the hospital to go get that checked. But she doesn't want to go because she's trying to find her captain. Her captain, I guess they were separated with this whole tsunami hit, and she's trying to make sure that he's basically okay. So she's basically like, I'll go to the hospital, but I'm going to go search for my captain right afterwards. So with all this chaos happening, Eddie has no idea what happened to Christopher. He's thinking that he's somewhere with Buck and they're all safe and sound, and he has no idea what's going on. He ends up giving him a phone call, and of course it just goes to voicemail, and he's leaving him a voicemail letting him know if he's okay. And it's kind of sad because it's like there's no way for Christopher to contact him. There's no way for Buck to contact him to let him know what's going on. And it's kind of sad because it's like he has no idea what's going on. And there's a possibility that his son might be dead. So Maddie ends up getting a 911 call from a lady who's not even in Los Angeles. But the whole reason for this phone call is because the lady's daughter is living in an apartment, and all of a sudden she starts texting her and it makes no sense. So she's thinking that something is wrong. So she ends up calling 911. She gets a hold of Maddie and she's telling Maddie everything of what's happening. And she's basically like, she doesn't know what to do with this. She wants to send somebody out, but there's nobody calling from this place. And she talks to her boss, tells her, hey, you know, I want to send somebody out there. The boss is like, there's nobody calling us from that location. Why would you want to send anybody out there? They're basically trying to make it off like there's nothing wrong. But Maddie kind of feels like there is something wrong because another 911 call comes and it's kind of like the same issue. They start talking and then all of a sudden it's just radio silence and nobody's picking up. So she's trying to see what she can do to actually send somebody over there to try to get some help. Now, I don't know if you remember on the last episode, there's this little girl who is flying her drone around, and she has a friend who's basically making a portrait of her. So that little girl who's flying the drone around, she ends up calling 911 because she sees a guy on top of, it looks like a palm tree, and it looks like he's stuck. She calls 911 and she gets a hold of Maddie, and they were able to save that guy. Now Maddie's basically asking her, how are you able to see this guy? The little girl says, I have a drone. So Maddie actually thought really good about this, telling her, hey, can you go to this place? Because I want to see what's going on. The drone starts flying over there, keeps on going higher and higher, and she sees that everybody in this apartment, that same apartment where the mom was calling for the daughter because she was texting gibberish, there's a bunch of people and they're just all down on the floor. Now, I thought that it was some type of a gas leak or a carbon monoxide, something like that, because why else would they be down? So Maddie is able to get that footage, and now she's actually have kind of like probable cause on why she can send somebody out there, and the fire department goes over there and tries to see what's going on. Now, there's this lady who's talking to Athena, and she's basically telling her, thank you. Now, pay attention to this lady because she's kind of important. The fire department finally make it to that apartment building that had maybe that gas leak or carbon monoxide. They go in there, and there shows that there's tons of fumes in there, which is carbon monoxide, and that's why all those people in there are basically passed out or close on the verge of dying. Bobby is able to get every single one of them out there. There's like 17 or more in there. He's able to get every single one of them out there. He loads them all up into a vehicle, and he's able to drive off before a gas explosion happens because of a gas truck outside. Now, I thought this scene was actually pretty funny. Athena ends up getting a dispatcher call saying that there's people out here looting, and she goes over there to try to find out what's going on. You see this guy carrying a big box, and it looks like it's either a surround sound or like a huge DVD player with everything that comes with it. Now, I thought that these guys were actually stealing something. Athena ends up telling him to put the box down. The guy ends up saying, I don't think you want me to drop this box. It turns out there's nothing but cats inside. There are kittens inside. And they end up opening the back of the van, and there's all these animals out there. Now, these guys, they're basically not looting. What they're doing is they're saving the animals. That way they can get them to their owner. But technically, they're still breaking into the owner's house to get those animals. She tells them, you know what, just drive off of what you have and let animal control handle the rest. Athena ends up walking the neighborhood, and she actually ends up coming across a cop who had a car land on his arm, and you can actually see that he actually tied it up a little bit to make sure that he kind of just doesn't bleed out, but you can tell from his face that he's basically bleeding out and he needs to get rid of this arm. He tells Athena to go break into somebody else's house, that way she can try to find some kind of knife or something like that and actually cut into it. Now, you can actually hear like the meat being cut, and that like kind of makes you cringe a little bit, but it's crazy how they actually did this and how Athena actually was able to get this guy with his arm off and was able to transport him to the hospital safely. So that same cop that Athena was helping out, basically the one that she cut his arm off, turns out to be the same cop that Ronda Rousey is actually looking for. He ends up being transported to the hospital. Ronda Rousey sees him, and they end up going inside, and now she's basically can be next to him and not have to worry about anything. So as I mentioned before, Buck is trying to find Christopher. He's still trying to find him throughout the whole episode. It comes to the very end. It's dark outside. He's already looked through so many places and he still can't find him. He's getting to the point where he's already losing hope. And he ends up coming across Eddie, and he tries to explain to him about what happened to Christopher, and both of them are just breaking down. It got me tearing up a little bit as well because of Eddie's reaction towards it. The way he actually looks like he was gonna cry. It like losing his son over this, it was sad. But then he ends up looking across Buck, and he ends up seeing Christopher. Now, that same lady who was telling Athena thank you, she was actually carrying a little boy, and I actually didn't recognize this until I started doing this review. She was carrying a little boy who was wearing a red hoodie. That same little boy that she was carrying turns out to be Christopher. So we get to the very end, and everything's just settling down now. There's a lot of signs being posted up saying, you know, missing person or have you seen this person? And it's a lot of people who are actually missing from this tsunami. Eddie was able to find his son. Buck was able to get some closure to make sure that nothing actually happened to Eddie's son. And it seems like everything was actually going fairly well. So even after all of this happened, I actually thought Eddie was going to hold some type of grudge towards Buck. But he ends up going over to his house and tells him to basically wash his son all over again. And Buck is actually surprised because it's like, after all this that happened, you're still trusting me with your son? Eddie realized that it was a natural disaster, and the way his son sees it, Christopher sees it that Buck tried everything he could to save him, and that's what he sees from that natural disaster. And now they can actually move on from that situation. So I thought that this episode was actually really good. I was hoping nothing happened to Christopher because I like his attitude. I like that he's always uplifting. He just seems like a nice kid. So I actually enjoyed the fact that he was actually able to live. Now the next episode looks to be a little bit more interesting again. There's this car that kind of like veers off the highway or somewhere where he basically jumps off of a cliff, and it's basically hanging there. Bobby and his team are basically going down there trying to make sure that they can save the people that are in that car, and then it goes off on where the car is about to fall off, and that's where it just cuts off. So I can't wait until the next episode that shows up. I'm still going to be talking about this show because I like this show a lot. This is one of those shows that I'm really looking forward to talking about. I'm really looking forward to watching, and it's basically the first thing I try to make sure I get on my list. So keep in tune to my channel. I'll talk more about it. Comment, like, subscribe. Let me know how I'm doing. If there's something you want me to talk about, let me know. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.